of knowledge, and that's what I try to provide with Africa Outreach Program.
Do you think the South African media does a good job of covering these issues?
I do, and I think it's one of the things that, for me as a South African, is very hard, but it's very important. But it's hard to go home and turn the radio on, and all you hear is people talking about violence against women and children, or just the general violence that is happening in South Africa. It's something that has to be done, and I think the journalists in South Africa do a great job. And I think it's also just coming out of frustration. I think we're at a time where people really want to get together and cause change. They just don't want to live. I think my work has somehow always reflected a social condition. I think that's just being part of being an actor. I mean, for me, anyway, it is. I mean, I think when you're playing any kind of, it doesn't have to be North Country or a monster or something that, you know, very evidently, or Valley of Ella has it as a social issue. To make it so, I don't know. I feel like when you're portraying human beings, you're always going to find yourself in some kind of a social condition that could be underlined. And I guess that's something that's under my skin. I don't really have to think about that so much. I feel very fortunate that I was raised in a country like South Africa. It made me very aware at a very young age that there's a whole world right above us. Lots of things happen, and I had an innate interest in that from a very young age. And I think that translates in my work.
A couple more questions, if you have.
Yeah, sure.
When you look back, how do you plan to measure your success in this adventure that you're setting out on now? And have you set yourself any kind of specific goals, or has the UN done that for you? And lastly, is there anywhere in particular that you're really dying to see or go to that you haven't been?
Oh wow, that was a lot of questions. One, success. Well, to measure success, that's something that I think can be very dangerous, and especially when you walk into a situation when you realize how big the problem you're dealing with. Trust me, I've had moments with my foundation where I sat down and threw my hands up and said, "Does any of this actually matter?" And I think every time that has happened to me, there's been one face that shows up in front of me with tears of joy, where you can see that what you have done has affected this one singular person. That to me is success. It's the only way I can do this. When you start thinking about the big picture, it's very overwhelming. And if I kept thinking about it that way, I think it would be very hard for me to continue the work that I do. So it's those individuals that come up to me, the ones where I can see, look at me and say thank you, and where I can really see that this person's life is never going to be the same because of one mobile unit that was brought into their community. That's what keeps my work going. That's what makes me feel like I have any kind of success. What was that? Oh, I don't, again, you know, I think my excitement for working with this organization is that I feel like I'm surrounded by like-minded people. I hope that's why I was given this appointment, and not because of my great fashion. I'm not sure about that. But I hope to be with those people, everybody included here in the panel, and everybody that I've met today, to have continued conversations about some of my ideas, some of their ideas, and I think together it's going to be way more powerful than what I've been doing on my own. When I say on my own, there's a few hundred people behind me doing a lot of great work, but I think together I hope to have it be quite powerful. Well, this is the good thing. I love to travel, so I think I'll be fine with this appointment. You know, I'm always interested. I think one of the reasons why I really wanted to work in rural South Africa was that, you know, myself and I, I'm from a farm community, very rural community. So no matter where I go, I'm always fascinated and interested to go to those places because I do feel that those
experiences help you in your work, help you maybe relate to such an important issue for you.
It's pretty hard to ignore violence when you grow up in a country like South Africa. I mean, I grew up in a country that was filled with turmoil, is still going through some severe growing pains. anybody's been reading the news lately, we're having some really exciting things happening in South Africa right now. I think that, I think that people want to somehow always connect a personal issue with the greater scheme of your life, which is, what you decide to do with your life or the work that you decide to do with your life. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but to be honest with you, it's not the first or the most important aspect that drives me in the work that I do. It's somewhat impossible for me to not have, as a human being, been given the information that I did from the rape crisis in '99 and not as a woman just say, this has got to stop. And if there was anything that I could do to get that message across, I wouldn't be able to live with my life if I didn't do that. So, I think some people, I think all of us can relate to that. I think we hear information, we get information about something, and it either emotionally taps into us, and from that moment on, every night you go to sleep, you're different. And I think that's what happened to me. I don't think it was necessarily one event in my life that made me want to do this kind of work.
Last question.
Yeah, thank you. Ban Ki-moon has launched a project to try and get more of these kind of UN issues, violence against women, climate change, addressed in movies and other forms of entertainment media. From your experience of Hollywood, what kind of reaction do you expect the Secretary General will receive in Hollywood?
I think it's great. I'm very excited to work with this campaign, which is violence against women and young girls. I think, like what I said to this gentleman earlier, I think that there's always an aspect, if you really look at it, there's always an aspect of some kind of a human condition combined with a social condition whenever you tell a story. Or I feel that the work that I do has that. It doesn't have to have this heavy underlining, I guess, like other films that I have done, like Valley of Ella, like I said before, North Country, or Long. For me, the work that I do as an actor and the work that I do as a humanitarian is quite separate. When I work as an actor, I understand my industry, I understand what my job is, and when I work as a humanitarian, I understand what that is, and I don't necessarily try or necessarily force the two to have to kind of intertwine with each other. I think it's wonderful that the Secretary General is sending a message out to Hollywood to and I always find it interesting that the pressure gets put on Hollywood when we really should be putting the pressure on society, because whenever we make these movies like North Country, people don't go and see it. So I think it's a much bigger issue than getting Hollywood to step in and make these films. I think we should be asking our public, why, when we make these movies, do they not go and see them? I think that's the bigger question. But I don't know if I answered your question, but I know that I'm an entertainer when I work as an actor. And then I know my job as a humanitarian. And I don't necessarily want to forget that my job as an actor is to entertain. But let me tell you, there's a tremendous feeling when you can do it with a sense of responsibility, with a sense of truth, with a sense of greater truth, which is not necessarily always good to look at or nice to look at, but it's something that I enjoy as an actor, definitely.